the work he's been doing and some of the exciting projects their office is going to give you a profile of that. Greg was here as an undergraduate in your planning program from 2000 to 2004. We were up on the 6th floor. We got to look at his old desk. We still have all of those desks, of course. And then went on and did a master's degree in planning and urban design at the University of Colorado in Denver. And so he's going to talk about sort of his career, activities, firms he's worked with, and then lead into some of the work that they're doing now. So we're very excited to have him here and be part of that. It's in his last few days as a U.S. citizen because he's...
well, I'm still going to be a U.S. citizen.
But he's going to broaden it to the fact that he's going to be a Canadian as well. Friday, you're swearing?
Friday.
Okay, so it's his last day of solo U.S. citizenship. So welcome, Craig. Welcome back, and thanks for joining us.
No, I appreciate it. Thanks for your time. As Scott said, my name is Craig Sklenar. I'm born and raised here in Indiana. I went to Ball State University from 2000 to 2004. From there, I moved to Denver, Colorado to do my graduate studies. And now I currently live in Ottawa. And come this summer, I'm actually moving to Montreal to lead our urban design team in Montreal and Ottawa as well. So today, I'm here actually to talk a little bit about our firm, Stantec, and the power of interdisciplinary teams. I want to walk through a little bit of who I am as far as my career, as well as who Stantec is and why interdisciplinary teams are important both to me and to our organization. I want to talk a little bit about why interdisciplinary teams are important to the trends that are happening in our world today and what our firm's position is on these trends and why we need to work together to actually solve problems that are becoming increasingly more complex as we build our environments. I'm going to show you 3 examples of the work that I have done or currently working on, and then any questions that you have, I'd be more than happy to answer that at the end of this presentation. A little bit about me. This photo up here is from Chicago. I lived in Chicago for 7 years. I worked for AECOM there for about 2.5, and I worked for the city of Evanston, Illinois, just north of the city of Chicago. And the reason I want to show this photo really quick is these 2 ladies here, June and Tina Travlos. They were part of the Edgewater Development Corporation, and I think this is one thing that I like doing is not just as a planner, I'm not just practicing, I'm volunteering my time to help our communities. And teamwork isn't just about what you do on the day-to-day, but also how you help build your communities as well. These 2, June and her husband, stayed in the city of Chicago in Edgewater during the 1960s when everybody was leaving. June and her husband bought up every unit that they could possibly afford because they wanted to make sure that the architecture and the vibrancy of their neighborhood remained. Tina, this beautiful Art Deco building here in the corner, Tina helped find every single federal dollar, local dollar, and builders to restore this building and turn it into an affordable housing project that caters to not low poverty, but sort of that affordable housing range, the 80 to 120 AMI. It's about who we know in our communities as well, and it's about who I am as well, is that this takes everybody to make our communities really vibrant. It's not just us as experts, it's everybody that we may meet on the street. So as I said, I graduated here, 2004, went to the University of Colorado, obtained a master's degree in urban design and urban planning, started working for Eck Bodine Austin Williams in Denver, and then transferred to the Chicago office. They're now part of AECOM. From there, I went to go work for the city of Evanston, Illinois, which is a suburban community just north of the city of Chicago. And in 2013, actually to this day, today's the day that I moved to Canada 6 years ago, I started working for the city of Calgary as one of their senior planners. Calgary at the time, oil was 110, does anybody know where Calgary is? Yeah, okay. I was told by my marketing team that I need to make sure Americans understand where in the world Canadian geography is. So Calgary is north of Montana, about 4.5-hour drive north of Montana. It's a city of 1.3 million people, so it's about the size of Indianapolis. At the time, 38,000 people were moving to Calgary every year. They needed planners, they needed architects, they needed everybody to understand where do you put 38,000 people a year? How do you handle that exponential growth? So I got recruited to actually move there and kind of took the leap. It's at that time that Stantec sought me out, and they were looking for an urban designer in the inner city. Traditionally, Stantec's more of an engineering firm. They were looking to expand their horizons and look in the inner city. They were doing a dramatic shift in their organization as well. So that's when I joined. And about a year and a half ago, I moved to Ottawa to help team lead the urban design practice there. And now I'm moving to Montreal to do both cities. These are the 4 things that I really want to talk about today when it comes to interdisciplinary teamwork. One is that you need to be agile. You need somebody to hold on to your vision. You really want to listen and learn, not just on your teammates, but your clients, your community, those that are impacting your development. And that we really want to look at creativity, because creativity provides that opportunity. And with your teams, creativity may be how you create a map, or how you tell the story, or even innovating a new process in which you're executing these projects. So who is Stantec? Does anybody know where Edmonton, Alberta is? Okay. Do we have Canadians here? No, kidding. That's about another 3 hours north from where Calgary is. It's the capital of Alberta. It's the oil capital. It's where our firm started. Stantec started as an engineering firm, mostly handling all the oil business in Alberta, and we've expanded from that presence. Right now we have about 400 offices and over 2,200 employees across the world, 22,000 employees. We have about 1,700 landscape architects, planners, urban designers across those 400 offices as well. And about 10 years ago, Stantec decided, what are we as a firm? They were an engineering firm, but they wanted to be more than that. And they came up with this sort of slogan, and, you know, we all like slogans, but I take this to heart, is that we always design with community in mind. And this isn't just the communities that we serve, but the community within our organization as well. We also have another motto, better together. And this is really the power of our teamwork, or our interdisciplinary teams that we work together. Our team in Montreal, when we go out for happy hour, we actually cheers better together. And there's no irony to it. There's no like corporate mandate for that, but it's something that we all believe in. And I think it's a really powerful idea. This is our new headquarters, actually. This tower here, Stantec Tower. Tallest building in Western Canada, 70 stories. It's part of the Ice District, the new Rogers Arena, because Canadians love hockey. It has to be the center of the city. This spurred a brand new redevelopment process in downtown that we were able to actually be a part of this. We did all the planning, engineering, landscape architecture, where we consolidated all of our offices in Edmonton into this one tower. And this was a $2 billion project. Now, this isn't just about us, you know, winning the work or doing the design, but we really felt it needed to make a statement of where our offices sit. If we're really thinking about designing community in mind, we want to make sure that our offices represent the best of what we can do in urban development. And this is what the plaza in front of Ice District is going to look like. This is a really exciting opportunity. This is finishing this year, hopefully. But the idea is that the whole development is around entertainment. So it's not just about hockey or the concerts, it's the movie theater, it's the shopping, it's adding 2,000 units into this area, as well as 2.5 million square feet of office. So that's a little bit about our firm. Happy to talk to you about opportunities later about that. When we look at interdisciplinary teamwork, we also look at trends and why we need to do it. One of the big trends that we're really focusing on right now is this idea of the new suburban life is urban. And that's because we have to put people somewhere, and we can't continue to open up suburban lands. And there's lands that are becoming available, like shopping malls, that are dying, that are great assets, that have great access, probably access to transit, and that retain a huge value. And so this is one of our clients in Vancouver. This is the Oak Ridge Mall. It's one of the highest valued shopping malls in Canada. They're adding 7 million square feet of development to this site. They're adding all kinds of units, partially because Vancouver is really expensive. We need to put people somewhere. People continue to move. But we're creating these land value opportunities that it's not just about a place to shop, and then your house is over here and your work is over here. We really are starting to combine these things. And when you do this, you need engineers, you need architects, you need landscape architects, planners, you need environmentalists, transportation specialists, because now you're looking at very complex systems. You're looking at how do we redevelop a mall that needs to stay in operation while we redevelop the mall and not lose revenue? How do you make sure that when you're adding 7 million square feet that you're not destroying the transit network? What are the additional public benefits? So part of this project is a 6-acre park on top of the mall that's public to provide those open space opportunities. Our teams have to work. I mean, this was probably 50 or 60 people master planning this over 10 years, and it's still continuing its evolution. We look at a trend on what I call TOD 2.0. We talked a lot about transit-oriented development. Gosh, I've been doing it for 15 years. We talk a lot about it in policy and design, but we're really not integrating transit operations with land use opportunities. And this is a project in Montreal that I'm working on, Taschereau Boulevard, 15-kilometer corridor. We're just at the beginning stages, and I'll talk a little bit more about it in detail, but we approached this differently. We said, how are we going to make this graphically interesting? How are we going to tell a lot of data on a very visual opportunity? How do we go beyond just saying this is how many people and how many jobs are going to be here without showing how we got there? So we sort of took a step back and worked with everybody together to understand what the goals and opportunities of this project is. And with political pressure right now, with less money to do more with, we have to figure out a way to really tell these stories and build the business cases, and that takes everybody at the table. Everybody shops online, right? Everybody in here, Amazon Prime, et cetera. But you still go out and spend your money somewhere, right? You go to a restaurant, your movie theater, et cetera. Retail's not going away. Retail's shifting. We're going into experiences, not purchases. Even retail stores like Restoration Hardware, they build restaurants now where you can't buy anything, but you can buy an experience, and you sit in Restoration Hardware furniture, and you can Instagram yourself in a space that's Restoration Hardware, but you don't buy anything. Our teams have to figure out how does that retail work in a new environment, because people are panicking about this, and we see it as an opportunity rather than an issue. We want those experiences as part of the vibrancy of our urban spaces, so we're trying to figure out what all those experiences are and how they may shift over time. This kind of stuff will take economists, retail experts, architects to understand those pieces, but also planners have to be at the helm too, because traditional retail has a very specific land use, entertainment has a very specific land use. We're now looking at different mixes to make sure that we have a flexibility in these types of spaces as trends ebb and flow within those ideas. Resiliency is a big component here. This is the Calgary Riverwalk. My house is actually right behind, it's not built in this picture. The condo that I own is right behind this wonderful heritage building. But the Riverwalk was the first piece that went in. The Riverwalk is not just a public park, it's not just a transportation corridor for bikes and pedways, it's also flood mitigation. The trees, the plant structures are cleaning the water that run through the Bow River. And our team worked with multiple people on this in the sense of environmental capacity, structural soils, structural engineers, and landscape architects and planners to create this outcome. So resiliency isn't about just climate change or about economic structures. It's about how can our projects and our dollars go further and do multiple things to weather those storms. And I'll show you why that's important here in a minute. In short, the world has changed. In the last 15 years, when I left Ball State University, a huge shift in what we're doing has happened. We're starting to see an urban boom. It's a reset. People are coming back into the city, and our urban population is growing. 80% of every housing unit that is being built right now is for a family of 2 or less. 80%. So we need more housing for less people per house. People still want their space, but how do we do it? We're going to have to go up. We can't go out because of the capacity issues with infrastructure. Our transportation systems are buckling, and we're seeing the bigger desire to live in these urban spaces. Sorry, I'm doing Canadian geography quizzes. Does anybody know what city this is? Yeah. Okay, the adults can't answer them. We're seeing a demographic shift. So we talk a lot about baby boomers and millennials in two very separate different areas. Baby boomers in which how they're retiring, millennials and how they're ruining everything. My favorite is that millennials ruin the vacation home industry because we don't buy vacation homes. Well, we can't even afford one house, let alone two. But when you look at them as one demographic, or both in what they're similar in, they like community connectedness. They like to be physically active. Wellness is a really big important component. They're really comfortable with technology. And when you look at them combined in the market sector, they're 60% of the market. Because baby boomers are, millennials are half Gen X, children of Gen Xers and half of baby boomers, and they actually created nearly the same population segment as the baby boomer generation. Now, of course, that's going to dwindle as the baby boomers shift into the later years. But right now, it's a really big component, and we have to accommodate 60% of the market that may have a lot of commonalities, but they're driven by different reasons. We're witnessing a mobility revolution. We were just talking about this, about autonomous vehicles, shared autonomous vehicles, scooters, the electric scooters, bike sharing, Uber, Lyft. It's a huge shift in what we're doing, but we don't know exactly how it's going to work just yet. We have some really great assumptions. Our firm at Stantec, we have researchers, we have partnerships with universities, with the provincial governments, transit agencies to research. We have 2 research testing beds, one in California and one in Edmonton, on autonomous vehicles that we work with manufacturers. And we internally make some assumptions, but it's going to take our entire team to figure this out. And it's also on the planners and landscape architects and urban designers side to figure out how is it impacting our urban realm. This summer I'm going to Louisville for the Congress of New Urbanism. Our firm is partnering with them to begin a white paper on how AVs are going to impact the urban realm. I'm really passionate about this because you see these beautiful renderings. Even this one's fun, right? There's all kinds of new technology in here. But we don't know exactly how our urban realm is going to look just yet, because we think that while people think people are going to be driving less, there's going to be more traffic on the road. So do we need to really be drastically changing our streets, or do we need to adjust them to accommodate that additional traffic? Our sites are moving to more mixed use. And we work with a lot of developers that used to be single developers, home builders that now want to do shopping, mixed use shopping centers, retailers that now want to do residential. And so this is a diagram that we like to show them because oftentimes if you're just a home builder, this is the activity that's happening on your site. If you're just a restaurateur, this is the activity that's happening on your site. But if you combine all those uses into one space, now your site is an 18-hour activity. People have to sleep at some point, but you have better efficiency for your site. It does cost more money to combine all of these things, but you're creating better value for what you're doing, and you're actually helping things with transportation systems, the infrastructure capacity in your area. You're not opening up new greenfield development to accommodate all of these in single user components. Our developments need to be more agile. This is something that we got from the Harvard School of Business, this idea of tribes and squads, that a lot of developers tend to look at their tribe of, let's say, millennials, and then they have different market sectors within that. They're homes in the hundreds, 200s, 300s, 400s. But if you really look at the idea of the squad, where you're accommodating different types of market sectors on one singular site, or you're anticipating those types of market sectors, you're able to actually create a project that's much more varied and weathers those economic storms. Because even with these mixed-use developments, it's a 10, 15, 20-year development cycle. Our economic cycles aren't lasting that long anymore. They're 5, maybe 7 years. So now, every 7 years, if you have to go back and replan your site because your market sector is no longer there, it's a waste of money. We're looking at our position on equitable development. When I say this, is that these are really great, exciting things. The world is changing, but people are being left behind. And we really want to make sure, and we're really passionate to crack this nut, to figure out how people of all socioeconomic backgrounds can live in these vibrant urban spaces. And this is Brooklyn Village in Charlotte, North Carolina. This is an old African-American neighborhood that was actually destroyed through urban development in the 60s. And we have been working over the last few years with the largest African-American home builder in the United States to develop this vision. And this is a mixed income, mixed affordability master plan that brings back that neighborhood to not what it used to be, but what it is today, or what it can be tomorrow. And we really feel it's important to work with our home builders, to work with our master plan developers and our cities to figure this out, because we can't just keep building our cities for the wealthy that can afford it. We need to figure out how everybody can live in these spaces. This is one that I'm really passionate about. It's the space between. It's about how our urban environment creates the places. Our teams really figure out or look at open spaces not just as a place for people to kick a soccer ball or sit and read a book in a park, but actually a transportation corridor or a gathering space or a place for a festival. We want these spaces to be as vibrant, active, varied, and usable as possible. If you ever get to go to Montreal, and I say this about Chicago too, Chicago and Montreal are cities that people live in. It's like a lived-in house. Every corner of that city, somebody is using that space. I don't like cities that are pristine and clean and perfect, because that just means that people aren't using the spaces. So if we're doing our job, if placemaking is really happening, they're crowded, they're active, even in the winter. We do a lot of winter city design because Canada, we have to figure that out. But we're out there and we're active because the space is facilitating those opportunities. So I'm going to show you two quick projects about Stantec as a broader whole of how we work in interdisciplinary teams. This is Evolve 1. I wasn't involved in this project, but this is Stantec's first net zero building for commercial office. Class A office in Waterloo, Ontario. That's near Toronto. It's north of New York. It's net zero, 100% designed in-house, and it's Class A office. It's commercial. It's not a research facility. It's not funded by the government. This is a private developer who said, I want to figure this out. And we wanted to figure it out as well. And it's not just a functional building that generates more energy than it needs, but it's also beautiful on the inside. We really wanted to make this a space that was creative, interesting, and really showed the commercial viability of net zero. We're really proud of this building. It's won a lot of awards in Canada, and it really, the developer is now looking at Evolve 2, and we're going to be starting that this year. Second one that I want to show, it talked a little bit about the Riverwalk. This is what Riverwalk looked like in June of 2013. We had the largest flood in Alberta's history, the most expensive natural disaster in Alberta's history, $6 billion worth of damage, 150,000 people displaced overnight. This was 3 months after I moved to Alberta. City Hall is here. We couldn't get into City Hall for 6 weeks. The flood inundated the basement, the underground parking structure. All of our telephone systems, electrical vaults, everything was destroyed in the flood. And this flood happened, and people had 45 minutes to get out of their house in some areas because it was a mountain stream, and they just come up through a quick storm. Basically what the storm did was sort of circulate for 48 hours, and it just dumped a huge amount of rain. But Riverwalk, this was 2012. Riverwalk is right behind me in this picture. And the water came to here because we looked at that. We understood what those flood mitigation measures are, and we wanted to make sure that whatever we did, only about 6 trees had to be replaced in this entire design, even though it used to look like this. I mean, it flooded. A lot of this flooding actually came up through the storm drains, et cetera. It just couldn't handle the soils couldn't handle the water drainage as well. But by planning for this resiliency, we proved out our ideas and we proved out our creativity. So being agile means we have to be flexible in our teams. Sometimes your project is going to be multi-years in the making. And our services are wide and varied within Stantec, and so we try to be agile. I mean, we have everything from stormwater, microgrids, energy, engineering, urban places group, resiliency, et cetera. But a lot of times our projects look like this. And it's a very honed in based on the task at hand. So we spend a lot of time within our organization of saying, when do you come in? When do you step away? What's the core team? Who's going to be handling this through the life of the project? And then what's most importantly as a planner is, when do you hand off the project to the next teammate to make it work? So I put this photo up here for Lauren. Just I draw too, just not as good, but I try. So everybody in our office, including the planners, I tell them they have to draw because we all have to sit around a table and figure it out. But I want to show a few examples. This section is building onto the vision, and a lot of my job as an urban designer, as a team lead, is making sure that our team is focused as we move through a project. This project that I'm going to show you, the Taza development, this is two-year project from start to finish. What we did, our contract ended, and somebody else has picked it up to execute it. But the Taza development is this little piece here in the Tsuut'ina Nation. So, in Canada, the First Nation the indigenous culture relationship is a little bit different, where nations have a little bit more power, not as much under the Indian Act, but they have this new thing called the Designated Land Management Act, where if they designate lands within their nation, the reserve, the Crown actually transfers the development powers to the nation, and they get to retain all the profits, they get to control everything that happens within those areas. So when the ring road, this wonderful feat of engineering, by the way, this is Calgary, this 101 kilometer ring road, needed to connect this little segment here, they worked for 14 years with the nation to come up with a deal. And the deal was $265 million in cash, extra land for the nation to build out here, and 3 interchanges along their stretch of the ring road. So they actually could unlock development potential and create this designated land management. So our team came in after the vision study to create a master plan. And what we came up with was 3 development cells stretched along 12 kilometers. It was about 1,200 acres overall, so about 400 acres per cell. But when realized, we'll see about 16 million square feet of vertical development, over 60,000 jobs and visitors per year. 12,000 residents are being accommodated, and over 20% of the space would be dedicated to open space. We basically had to create a city operation from day one. How do you build a city administration from day one? Nobody knew, because a lot of our engineers just follow the policies and procedures that cities have already established. This was one of the biggest change management projects that I've ever had internally to push people outside of their boxes, because they're just so used to following rules and regulations, they didn't think about how to actually design those rules and regulations. So we have 3 development cells here. Taza Park, which is this sort of mixed-use entertainment district. Taza Crossing, which was primarily residential, and then some office and medical research. And then Taza Exchange is a more traditional retail center. All this is centered around the idea of economic independence for a nation that lives within a nation. The Tsuut'ina people are very business focused. They have a great relationship with City of Calgary staff. They have a great relationship with the province as well. And this is their opportunity to actually show how they can do it. They've partnered with a developer called Canderel. And we created all of these items: the urban design guidelines, the zoning bylaw, preliminary branding guide, the public realm framework. All of these master plans that included stormwater management, environmental services, preliminary civil engineering, stripping and grading. We had about 50 people working on this project at one point, and this took 2 years. And I had to make sure everybody executed. And what came out of it was a vision that they can actually now execute. And that to me is a really powerful opportunity of what we do in our job. But it takes 50 people within our organization to help figure that out. And it actually is going to take more. There's probably 200 people overall working on this. So this is the rendering that I showed. This is Taza Park, the idea of this sort of main street, mixed use in the entertainment district. Taza Commons, what we looked at was this idea of stormwater running through the retail street itself so that it could, we wouldn't have to build storm ponds within those facilities. And Taza Crossing, this is going to be mostly residential, which is really unusual for a reserve to invite people from outside onto their lands. This was a very big idea. Now nobody can own land here. It's going to be rentals, but they really wanted to make sure people understood this was for everybody, not just for their nation. Mostly because the nation's only 4,000 people, and with 60,000 jobs and 12,000 residents accommodated for, they needed people from the city of Calgary to come be part of this idea. The next idea is listen and learn. So indigenous culture, we're now moving into the Coptic culture. I'm starting to work more with cultural organizations. It's actually kind of fun. We were approached in Ottawa about a year and a half ago, to work with the Coptic Orthodox Church. They wanted to build their first monastery in Canada. They have two in the US right now. They're a huge population growing in Ottawa and Montreal. We're actually doing 5 churches for them in Ottawa right now. But the monastery was one of the more important things. So I led a team for about a year and a half. We had about 20 people. When we started with them, we developed some core principles, and it was everything from sustainability to the cultural aspects of their church as well. I knew nothing about the Coptic religion. I still know not much, but I know enough now that the altar has to face east, and that monks like to have their cells face the water because they really like water views. But also that they like nature, and they're really about the land and being connected to that, not just about being connected to God, but also the environment around them. This is their development program. It's a 50-year master plan. We had to accommodate what's called the monks building. That would go from 20 monks to 50 monks over the next 50 years. We have something called St. Manus Lodge. The interesting thing about a monastery is that in the Coptic Church, it's also a place for retreats, for families, for people that are considering to become part of the monastic life. So we had to accommodate weekend retreat facilities in a lodge. We had the existing building on site. It was about an 8,000 square foot home that was turned into an executive retreat center that then went into foreclosure. That's why they bought the land. To everything from monks, the trails, the cemetery, a space for summer events. Parking was really important to them. And activities, because the monks need to keep busy. So everything, we're looking at a modern farm to the trail system itself and cabins out in the wilderness. This is the site. It's 288 acres. It's about 90 minutes southwest of Ottawa, near a town called Perth. It borders a provincial park. The northern side of this is Murphy's Point Provincial Park. At the time, the Rideau Trail, which is a massive regional hiking trail that runs through Ontario, cut through the site. It now sort of skirts along and comes down this road, and the existing house itself. But when we did our site analysis of all the provincially significant wetlands that hatched, we have 2 brown circles where we could actually build. And to get to this one out here is nearly impossible. We would have to destroy the landscape to actually get out into these areas. So we started on, and here's what the site looks like in the winter. I've been out here in -0 Fahrenheit temperature. It's quite lovely, actually. And here's it in the summer. It's vastly different. It has a series of beaver ponds, glacial scouring from the Ice Age has created these sort of long, thin lakes and valleys. So this here is I'm standing on a beaver dam looking down those glacial lakes. This sounds very Canadian, I'm sorry. Beavers move. I don't have any picture of moose, sorry. But we worked as a team. This is one of my favorite photos of my career. It's a series of monks sitting with our landscape architect, Julie, around our master plan. And it's such a bizarro life that I live, that I get to work with these kinds of people. And they're very technologically savvy. The guy standing up just came in from Egypt that day. He had never seen snow before in his life. And he's out there with his iPad and he's geolocating our walk so we could actually site the buildings together. But we came up with these three options. The idea of the sort of eco-monastery, using the natural patterns, the glacial scouring, the trail system that was already there as an inspiration, and then what if we just ignored all that and created more of our own formal pattern? This was the eco-monastery, and you actually don't see the monks building because it's way off in the distance. It's buried in the site. We ruled this one out early because it was just going to cost too much money to do. It's a great idea, but the amount of the idea of eco and then having to destroy the landscape to build something in a very pristine area really didn't sit well. This was the natural patterns concept. You're going to see this this is the existing building here. This is the idea of using the glacial scouring as a point placement, and we come back to that. And then this idea is the formal campus idea, where the more public pieces sit amongst this sort of courtyard space. And while it's a good idea, it just sort of didn't really fit the landscape itself. So this is where we landed on, is we have this area here, which is the monks building. It's separated from more of the public areas, and you can see the trails. These trails here are for the public. These trails on the back of the building are for the monks themselves. The farm site is going to be an urban farm site where we're looking at aquaponics, because this is all Canadian shield, rocks right at the surface. It's not really good farming land, but they want to be able to generate their own food on site because they don't want to have to go to the grocery store all the time. And then the monks building itself, this idea of the Y-shape structure, which is still in evolution. This is their central core, their day-to-day activities. We thought the original concept was actually to pull these pieces out, and it would be more in the reminiscent idea of an old monastery where they'd have to sort of walk building to building. But the Egyptian monks don't really like winter here. So they wanted everything indoors. They liked the idea, so we're trying to find a way to accommodate that in a winter setting. And then we're doing these prefab. Each one of these rectangles are 5 cells, so we can design them prefab, and then when they're ready to add monks, we just sort of tack them on and place them gently into the landscape. So we're not really destroying the landscape too much. And so these sort of sit, this sits on a ridge, this sits on a ridge, this sits on a ridge. The church within the monks building faces east. The public church faces east. Those were 2 really critical components. The monks get to look out and over into the water, and we have this sort of buildings that are nestled in the landscape. And we're working on a design aesthetic that blends sort of Ontario rural vernacular in a contemporary form with flourishes of Coptic church patterns, textures, and symbology on it. So when you come upon it, it looks like sort of this modern camp that serves the monastery. So the last piece I want to talk about is creativity. We all are encouraged to be creative in our day-to-day lives, but what I've learned over time is, well, sometimes we don't have time for that, or we don't have money for that, or we don't have the team to do it. But what I find is if you start at the beginning and say, okay, what is this project really about? That's where your creativity starts. That's where you can research and develop these ideas and execute. Because in a firm, as large as I'm in, while it's great to create these ideas, we have to be able to be profitable in what we do. And I hate to burst your bubble, but that's if you're working for a for-profit entity, we have to be profitable. We have to serve our clients, but we also have to serve our day-to-day practice as well. So the best way of being creative is showing that your creativity can actually do the project better. It can actually innovate, and it can actually be repeatable in other ways. That's why I'm showing this wonderful creative graphic here, all in French. Everybody's going to get a test on language here later. So Taschereau is a 15-kilometer rapid transit line on the South Shore. It connects, it'll eventually connect 6 municipalities as it expands, but right now it connects 4 municipalities. And here's the site. So Montreal sits over here, and across you have two main bridges, actually three, that connect. The Champlain Bridge is being replaced right now with, they're adding a light rail system to it called the RIM, that the provincial pension fund is paying for half of it. It's a really interesting scheme. That will connect into here and then down. And Taschereau actually runs north-south, and while technically the South Shore is on the east side because people from Montreal view themselves as the center, everything's north, south, east, west in their minds from the mountain. It connects from downtown Longueuil to La Prairie, which is more of a traditional suburban area. And then Longueuil has a subway line that connects into the city. So you have the light rail and then the metro crossing in these areas. And Taschereau will be sort of the backbone that ties into these, that gets people into the job centers, into the island of Montreal. We were told to do a study that said how many people can actually live if we build this transit line, how many people are going to live here in the future, how many jobs are going to be here, how much development can we actually get in this area. And traditionally what they would do is just take this line, do a 500-meter offset, and then just do a basic algorithm and said, you're going to get 40,000 people. And they don't show how they get to that number. But then they just sort of reiterate that, and it never happens. So this is right now the current TOD policy with the new RIM stations, the regional rail system, and the metro. And then all the red is land that's either available for redevelopment or vacant or has high potential for redevelopment. This is current land use. And then what we did was divide it into segments, and this is important because I'll show you a little bit later as how we illustrate these ideas. But instead of doing that setback, we actually did a visual assessment of all the land valuations in the area, of all the land use typologies, and we created a corridor boundary area that fluctuates into a more sort of realistic, where we think redevelopment could occur on a TOD setting. We haven't chosen stations yet. We haven't chosen technology. All we know is that it's going to go from A to B, and we want to know how much redevelopment is actually going to occur. We then did a visual site assessment. We looked at things like short-term redevelopment opportunities based on its current conditions. So there's a lot of strip malls here that are sort of half full, or a shopping mall that's just kind of did a repositioning but still not really doing well. We have issues with infrastructure as far as building over these highway ramps, et cetera. So we're sort of building these cases as we move forward. And then what we developed was sort of these five land use typologies that we used as part of our calculations. Everything from these mall redevelopments to these large-scale, multi-phase, long-term. We were trying to create a methodology that showed where we think development's going to happen and then carving it up into 5-year chunks so that we can create a probability that can be augmented over time. And this is what we came up with, this wonderful math equation. I'm not going to go into this, but essentially what we did was we assigned all kinds of assumptions to the typologies of land use, to the probability of redevelopment, and how much of those elements will actually redevelop. So in most of our scenarios, we're like, of these 5 land uses, we're only anticipating what we've identified, that 70% of it will redevelop over 30 years. Because we know that not everything's going to redevelop in a 100% scenario. Now we can continue to toggle that as we get more information. We can continue to toggle our assumptions on square footage per housing unit or square footage per job in an office setting. But we wanted to have a starting point that then we can get to this answer. Because the client wanted this answer on day one. And we said, well, we could do it your way, or we could work through this and figure out different ways of doing it. And what this has done is the provincial ministry has signed off on this new methodology. They say this is going to be the new standard in which they're going to evaluate new projects within it. And it's created a new process within our firm. We had 12 people within our firm review this. Mobility experts, transit planners, people that design transit, economists. I had this go through a rigor because I didn't want to put something out there that wasn't going to work. And it's not perfect, and we can continue to work on it. But now what we've done is we've said, we think in 30 years, 53,000 people could live along this corridor if you build this transit. because we know that the intensification can happen because the justification now is that they have the opportunity to get to work in a much quicker setting. We think you could also add 18,000 jobs in this area. We don't think it's a big job market area. Most people are going to go into the city of Montreal, and that's where we're going to see that explosion of growth. And that's divided into new commercial and office and retail. But then we're also able to drive this down. So we have 4 municipalities. They all have to work together. So when you talk about teamwork, there's nothing worse than 4 different municipalities competing for the same amount of density. So what we wanted to do is start to show them, look, everybody gets something. It's going to be in different scales. It's going to match your community, and it's going to match the opportunities in the area. So this is the Panama station. This is where the REM light rail comes through. Taschereau will have a station here in the area, and then the regional bus system dumps out in this area as well. There's a huge shopping mall here that really needs to be redeveloped. And then these shopping centers down here, they're kind of dying too. Toys R Us just flew out of there the week that we were there. There's an old Staples. So we're able to say, okay, well, here's all the available land that in this area that we think is going to happen. All this light green is vacant land. The darker green is land where the building is less than the value of the land itself. So we think those could be redeveloped. We think this is the character now. We think eventually this could be the potential character. Obviously, it's a Stantec project. And then in this area, we think this is where how many jobs and how many people could potentially live in this area. What we're doing is we're taking that big number and we're breaking it down into consumable chunks for the municipality to understand what they need to start planning for. They can take these cut sheets to their infrastructure group and say, do we have the infrastructure capacity to handle this? What kinds of transportation needs do we have? Can we actually put more density? Is our land use assumptions correct? Do we go more full tilt on this and say, this is where we want to invest our money? We're trying to create information that communities can start making decisions on what they want to see in the value of their area. But this takes a team sitting around a table saying, how can we do this better? It's one of my favorite areas, Denver. So we're back in the United States. This is Union Station. This used to be a parking lot. So there's a lot of information here. It's a really exciting place to work as far as Stantec. But I think the thing that I want to leave you with is that it takes everybody around a table talking about these things to figure out these solutions. And as you move through in your career, I really encourage you to be part of that conversation. I encourage you to ask questions, to listen, and to think of new ideas to solve these solutions, because things are only going to get more complex from where we're at right now, and we need the best and the brightest sitting around the table. So, thank you.
Oh. Great job. Let's do some people saying questions. Any questions we have?
Bruce. Sorry, one last thing. If you are interested in our organization, please, I encourage you to go to stantec.com/careers if you're interested in looking at job opportunities. And then ideas.stantec.com is where we have some more of the reports and blog entries about the kind of work that we do.
So I actually have another question for you, but I wanted to ask for the sake of my students.
Yeah.
Internships available at Stantec, could you comment, it's right on your website?
Yeah.
Availability?
Yes.
And application. So on transit-oriented development that creates jobs and residents, do you use that transit TIF to subsidize the transit?
If you're in the U.S., yes.
Okay.
In Canada, it's a little bit more difficult. You don't have those as tools.
You can't use a TIF?
TIF doesn't exist in Canada.
Doesn't exist.
There's something called the CRL, the Community Revitalization Levy, but it's a really hard tool to use. So I can count of 3 that are used in Canada.
Can you dedicate revenues?
Yep.
You can.
You can.
So you can get around, you don't have to mandate it. You can just say,
Yep.
in my budget, we're going to provide
Yep.
property taxes for
Yep.
transit.
So a lot of times cities will actually dedicate their capital budgets to those elements.
Any other questions?
The few students left. Thanks for staying.
Simple question here. I've enjoyed the graphics very, very well. My question is, what different applications do you use to generate these graphics?
A lot. So like these renderings are typically farmed out to rendering organizations that we hire. But like Tashrol is GIS. Like all this is InDesign and Illustrator, but the mapping is GIS exported to Illustrator. And then we've created our own palettes to create consistency within that. So we're not doing anything crazy innovative. We're just using the tools that we have on a day-to-day basis.
All right, well, thank you. And
Thank you for your time.
questions, go on out, and we can answer those in a more intimate setting. Thank you, Fred.
Thank you.
Thank you.